They had 8 months. Taman spent the first hour of that time thinking about running away. He had come out here to escape responsibility, to be alone. Now he and Yuna were apparently responsible for warning all of humanity about an alien threat. But running would not change anything. The Directorate was coming whether he liked it or not. "We need to get off this station," he said. "Get back to my ship. Send messages to every government, every news network, every person who will listen." Yuna was still reading through files, her eyes moving rapidly across the screen. "Wait, there's something else here. A deeper layer of data that Judge didn't show us. We don't have time for research. Make time. This is important." She pulled up corrupted files, using her translator to piece together fragmented information. The Vorn left notes. Personal journals, not official records. They were conflicted about the assessment program. Some of them thought it was necessary to guide primitive species. Others thought it was wrong to interfere. That's fascinating, but how does it help us? Because they left something. A gift, they called it. For any species that earned the right to refuse. Yuna pointed at coordinates embedded in mathematical formulas. "It's hidden in the galactic core, near the Directorate's territory." The Vorn wanted species to have a choice. They didn't want the Directorate to be the only option. Taman looked at the coordinates. What kind of gift? The files don't say, just that it's meant for species who value freedom over security, who choose the difficult path over the easy one. Before they could investigate further, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Judge's voice became urgent. "Warning. Unauthorized presence detected. Directorate vessel approaching. Arrival in 17 minutes. "That's impossible," Yuna said. "They can't be here already. The transmission just sent." They were already watching, Taman realized. They knew about this station. They were waiting to see if anyone would activate it. A new voice filled the chamber, speaking perfect Korean. "Greetings, Taman Kang and Yuna Park. I am Haksu of the Directorate. We have been monitoring this facility. Your performance in the assessment has been impressive." The voice came from everywhere at once. Taman grabbed Yuna's arm. "We need to leave now." They ran through the station's corridors back toward the docking port where Taman's ship waited. Behind them, they could feel the presence of something vast approaching. The station's walls hummed with energy as the Directorate ship connected to it. They reached the docking port and rushed through the airlock to Taman's ship. He threw himself into the pilot's seat and started the engines. But before he could disconnect, a figure materialized in the ship's cargo bay. It looked human. Male Korean features, wearing simple clothes. But its eyes were wrong. Swirling patterns moved in them like watching complex calculations happening in real time. "Please do not leave," the figure said. "Haksu, we mean you no harm. We wish only to extend our offer to humanity." "Get off my ship," Taman said, his hand hovering over the emergency separation controls. "I cannot allow you to leave until we have spoken. The Directorate has traveled far to meet you, to welcome humanity into the community of advanced species." Haksu smiled, but it looked artificial, practiced. "You have proven yourselves worthy. We offer technology beyond your current understanding, medical advances that will eliminate disease, power sources that will end scarcity, knowledge that will answer questions your scientists have struggled with for generations." "In exchange for what?" Yuna asked. "Integration, cooperation, harmony." Haksu moved closer, and neither Taman nor Yuna could move away. It was not threatening, but its presence was overwhelming. "The Directorate maintains peace across thousands of worlds. We have eliminated war, poverty, suffering. We can offer the same to humanity. By changing us," Taman said. "By making us like you. By helping you evolve beyond your limitations. Humans are chaotic, unpredictable, violent. These traits cause suffering. We can smooth away the rough edges, make you better, happier, more efficient." "You mean you'll make us stop being human?" Yuna said quietly. Haksu tilted its head. "You say that as if being human is valuable. Your species has existed for less than 1,000,000 years. The Directorate has maintained stability for over 100,000. We know what works. Why struggle and suffer when you could simply accept guidance?" Taman looked at the control panel in front of him. At the systems he had spent 10 years learning to repair and modify. His hands moved almost without thought, accessing functions he had not known existed until Judge scanned his brain. He could see it now. The Directorate's presence in the ship's computer systems, protocols that had been inserted the moment Haksu materialized. His ship was compromised, But the knowledge Judge had accidentally given him showed him how to fight back. "Yuna," he said quietly, "do you trust me?" She looked at him, this man she had known for less than a week. This burned-out engineer who had revived her from a century of sleep, who had solved impossible tests with her, who had refused to let her die even when it would have been easier. "Yes," she said. Taemin's hands flew across the controls. He was building something in the ship's computer systems. A virus, a piece of code that used the Vorn knowledge in his head to create something the Directorate had never encountered. It was not elegant. It was chaotic, unpredictable, human. It was perfect. "What are you doing?" Haksu asked, concern finally showing in its artificial voice. "Making a choice," Taemin said. He uploaded the virus into the connection between his ship and the Directorate vessel. It spread through quantum entanglement, riding the same networks that made the Directorate's technology so powerful. Haksu convulsed, its form flickering like a broken hologram. The swirling patterns in its eyes became chaotic, confused. "Stop. You do not understand what you are doing. You are disrupting systems that maintain order across hundreds of worlds." "Good," Taemin said. His head felt like it was on fire. The knowledge Judge had given him was burning away as he used it to create the virus. He could feel his enhanced understanding fading, being destroyed by the very act of using it. But he did not stop. The virus was spreading, not destroying the Directorate's networks but disrupting them, creating interference, buying time. Haksu's form destabilized completely and vanished. The connection between the ships broke. Taemin hit the emergency separation controls and his ship pulled away from the station. Behind them, the Directorate vessel began to drift, its systems overwhelmed by the chaotic code spreading through them. Taemin collapsed in his seat. His nose was bleeding. His vision was blurry. Yuna caught him before he fell. "Did it work?" he asked weakly. "It worked. The Directorate ship is disabled. We're free." She checked his vital signs with the ship's medical scanner. "But you're hurt." "What did you do?" "Used the knowledge Judge gave me to create something that fights back. But using it burned it out of my brain. I can't remember any of it now. The advanced engineering, the Vorn principles all gone. Was it worth it?" Taemin managed a weak smile. "Ask me again when we warn Earth and they don't arrest us for being insane." Yuna set the ship on course for the nearest human colony. Then she activated the communication system and began recording everything they had learned. The Vorn, the assessment, the Directorate, the choice facing humanity. "This is Unipark, xenoarchaeologist, transmitting an emergency message to all human authorities," she began. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but you need to listen. Humanity has been assessed by ancient aliens and we passed. But passing comes with a price," and she continued recording while Taemin rested. The virus he had created would buy them time. Maybe 30 years, maybe 50. Eventually, the Directorate would recover, adapt, return. But by then, humanity would know the truth. They would have time to prepare. Time to decide their own path. 3 days later, they reached the colony. Yuna transmitted their message to every government, every news network, every communications channel she could access. Then they waited to see what would happen. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some people believed them. Many did not. Governments called emergency sessions. Scientists demanded to examine the data. Religious leaders debated what it meant. Conspiracy theorists had field days. But underneath the chaos, something else was happening. Humanity was uniting. The scattered colonies and independent governments were talking to each other for the first time in decades. Military forces were coordinating. Scientists were sharing research. And 3 alien species, minor members of the Galactic Coalition, contacted human diplomats with a surprising message. They had also been assessed by the Vorn. They had also been threatened by the Directorate. They wanted to work together. 6 months after leaving the station, Taemin and Yuna stood in a conference room above Earth, looking down at their homeworld. They had been asked to join something new. An alliance of species who wanted to advance on their own terms, who wanted freedom instead of security, who chose the difficult path. "We were just looking for a fresh start," Taemin said, watching the planet turn below them. "We got one," Yuna replied. "Just not the kind either of us expected." A message arrived. Origin unknown, but quantum signatures matching the Directorate's systems. They opened it carefully. The text was simple. 37 years. The third test was different. No physical challenge, No survival scenario. Instead, Judge showed them images on a massive screen that filled one entire wall of the chamber. Images of Earth, of humanity's history. Wars, genocides, cities burning, forests destroyed, oceans polluted. The worst moments of human civilization displayed in brutal detail. Children starving, people killing each other over religion, over land, over resources, nuclear explosions, concentration camps, slavery. Una turned away, her hand over her mouth. Taman stared at the screen, his jaw tight. They both knew this history. Every human did. But seeing it all at once, every terrible thing their species had ever done, was overwhelming. Then the images changed. Acts of kindness. A firefighter carrying a child from a burning building, doctors working for free in disaster zones, strangers helping strangers, art, music, science, people building homes for those who had none, protests against injustice, sacrifices for the greater good, the good and the bad, all mixed together, all undeniably human. Judge's voice filled the chamber. Humanity has demonstrated extreme destructive capability alongside creative and compassionate capacity. Explain why your species deserves to continue existing. Explain why the galaxy should allow human expansion, when history shows you destroy as much as you create. Una looked at Taman. He looked back at her. How did you defend humanity's right to exist when the evidence of their failures was right there on the screen? I don't think we can defend everything humans have done, Una said slowly, speaking to Judge but looking at the images. Some of those things have no defense. They were wrong, evil, we know that. Then you admit your species is fundamentally flawed? Yes, she said simply. We are flawed, very flawed. But here's what makes us different from a species that's just destructive. We know it. We remember our mistakes. We teach our children about the terrible things we've done so they won't repeat them. We try to be better. Taman stepped forward. You want to know why humanity deserves a chance? Because we're still trying. We haven't given up. Every generation we fight to do better than the last one. Sometimes we fail, but we keep trying anyway. Many species try, Judge countered. Trying is not unique. But we don't wait to be perfect before we act, Taman said. He thought about his military service, about all those years following orders. We know we're going to make mistakes. We know we're going to fail sometimes. But we help people anyway. We build anyway. We create anyway. Because waiting until we're perfect means never doing anything at all. Una nodded. The Vorn studied us for thousands of years before we even knew aliens existed. They waited. They watched. They judged from a distance. But humans don't work that way. We get involved. We help even when it's messy and complicated. We try even when we might fail. This could be seen as recklessness, Judge observed. Maybe, Una admitted, but it's also courage. It takes courage to act knowing you might be wrong, to help knowing you might fail, to keep trying after you've already failed before. The images on the screen changed again. This time they showed recent history. Humans meeting alien species for the first time. The formation of the Galactic Coalition. Human ships exploring new worlds. Human scientists working alongside alien researchers. And yes, there were mistakes, misunderstandings, conflicts. But there were also friendships, cooperation, shared discoveries. Look at that. Taman pointed at one image showing a human doctor and an alien patient. We've been in space for less than a century. We're still learning. Still making mistakes. But we're not destroying everything we touch. We're adapting, growing, becoming part of something bigger. Your species is young and unpredictable, Judge said. This makes you dangerous. Or it makes us valuable, Una replied. Every other species in the coalition has been traveling space for thousands of years. They've become stable, predictable, set in their ways. But humanity brings something new, fresh perspectives, different solutions. We solve problems in ways that never occurred to species who have been doing things the same way for millennia. Taman remembered the first two tests. That's how we passed your challenges, isn't it? We didn't solve them the way the Vorn would have. We didn't even try. We found our own way. That's what humans do. We don't fit into existing boxes. We build new boxes. Judge was silent for a long moment. The images on the screen froze on a picture of Earth from space. Blue and green and beautiful and fragile. Assessment complete, Judge finally said. Species demonstrate self-awareness of limitations combined with refusal to be constrained by them. Unusual, potentially valuable. Proceeding to final evaluation, the screen went dark. New doors opened in the walls. But before they could move toward them, Taman noticed something strange. While he had been talking, while his attention was focused on the screen, his hands had been working almost automatically at a nearby control panel, taking it apart. Studying it and understanding it, he looked at his hands in confusion. He knew things now that he had not known before. Engineering principles from the Vorn technology. Advanced concepts that humans would not discover for centuries. How was that possible? Yuna, he said quietly. Something's wrong. She looked at him. What do you mean? I understand this technology. I shouldn't, but I do. It's like the information is just in my head now. Yuna's eyes widened. She turned to Judge. What did you do to us? The assessment process includes data collection, Judge replied calmly. Your neural patterns have been scanned and analyzed. Side effects may include temporary knowledge transfer from the station's database to your biological memory. This is normal. You copied our brains? Taman felt violated, angry. Without asking? Consent is not required for assessment. The Vorn designed these stations to study primitive species thoroughly. Neural scanning is standard procedure. Where did you send the data? Yuna demanded. Where are the copies of us? Transmitted to the gathering place. Standard protocol. Taman and Yuna looked at each other with growing horror, somewhere far away in a place they had never been. Copies of their minds existed, being studied, analyzed, used by whoever or whatever controlled the gathering place. We need to stop this, Yuna said. She started running toward the computer core they had used earlier. We need to stop the transmission, delete the data, something. But it was too late. The transmission had been sent days ago during the first test. While they were focused on survival, Judge had been quietly completing its true purpose. Not just testing them, studying them, copying them. Taman helped Yuna search through the station's systems. His new knowledge made it easier to navigate the Vorn technology, but it also showed him how sophisticated their systems were. The transmission was long gone, traveling through quantum networks at speeds that made normal space travel look slow. It's already at the gathering place, he said quietly. Whatever's there knows about us now. Yuna pulled up the coordinates for the gathering place. They placed it somewhere in the galactic core, impossibly far away. No human ship could travel that distance in a reasonable time. She kept digging through files, and what she found made everything worse. Taman, look at this. She pointed at the screen. The gathering place is controlled by something called the Directorate. They're a coalition of the 7 species that passed the Vorn assessment over the last 100,000 years. They're the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. That doesn't sound terrible. Maybe they'll welcome us. Read this file. It's partially corrupted, but what I can understand. She scrolled through translated text. The Directorate doesn't just welcome new species. They transform them, change them, make them similar to themselves. It talks about neural modifications, cultural integration, biological alterations. Taman felt cold. They change species that pass? I think so. The Vorn called it ascension. But based on these files, it looks more like assimilation. Species that join the Directorate stop being what they were. They become something else, something uniform. They stared at each other, the full implication sinking in. They had passed the assessment. That should have been good news. But if passing meant humanity would be changed, transformed into something that fit the Directorate's idea of advancement, then maybe failing would have been better. We have to warn Earth, Yuna said. Warn everyone. They need to know what's coming. Will anyone believe us? Taman asked. 2 people nobody's ever heard of, claiming ancient aliens are going to come and change humanity? The first test was simple to understand but impossible to complete. At least it should have been impossible. The room sealed itself shut. The lights changed to a dim red color. Judge's voice explained the challenge. Power has been disabled in this section. Restore it to proceed. Time limit 1 hour. Failure will result in oxygen depletion. Taman looked around. The walls were covered in panels with strange symbols and connection points. Tools floated in magnetic fields along the ceiling, each one designed for hands that had more fingers than humans possessed. Everything was built for beings who could see electromagnetic fields the way humans saw light. We're going to die, Yuna said calmly. Probably, Taman agreed. But I didn't quit the military and buy a terrible ship just to die in an alien test chamber. So let's think. He examined the tools. Most of them had 8 gripping points designed for the Vorn's multiple limbs, but the basic principles were the same as human tools. Clamps, connectors, probes, just built for different hands. I can't see electromagnetic fields, he said, but I can build something that can. Una watched as he pulled down several tools and began dismantling them. His hands worked quickly, confidently. This was what he had done for 10 years in the military. Fixing things, making broken equipment work. Taking tools designed for one purpose and adapting them for another. What are you building? Una asked. A sensor. The station has electromagnetic systems. That means there are fields we can't see. If I can build something to detect them, I can map where the power is supposed to flow. With alien tools you've never used before? Tools are tools. Electricity is electricity. Taman connected 2 pieces together. Sparks flew. He cursed and tried again. The principles are universal, probably. Una pulled up her translator and started examining the panels on the walls. These symbols follow a pattern. They're not a language exactly, more like a schematic. If I'm reading this right, the power flows from top to bottom, but there are breaks in the circuit. Where? She pointed. There, and there. 3 connection points that need to be bridged. Taman finished his makeshift sensor. It looked like a mess of wires and components held together with hope and desperation. He turned it on. Nothing happened for a moment, then it began to beep. Slowly at first, then faster as he moved it toward the wall panels. It works. He followed the beeping pattern, mapping the electromagnetic fields he could not see. You're right. 3 breaks. But the connection points are behind these panels, and I don't have the right tools to open them. How much time do we have? 30 minutes, they stared at the problem. The tools were wrong. Their biology was wrong. Everything about this test assumed capabilities they did not have. It was designed to take 10 minutes for a Vorn. For humans, it was impossible, unless they stopped trying to do it the Vorn way. Help me move this panel, Taman said. He had switched from trying to use the alien tools properly to just using them as crowbars and hammers. They pried at the wall covering until it came loose. Judge said we had to restore power, Una pointed out. Not that we had to do it carefully. I like how you think. They worked together, tearing into the station's walls with increasingly creative uses of the Vorn tools. Taman's military engineering experience combined with Una's understanding of alien systems. She read the patterns. He built the solutions. Neither of them worked the way the test expected, but they worked. With 5 minutes remaining, Taman connected the last circuit. The lights flickered, then brightened. The door opened. Fresh air flowed into the room. Judge's voice sounded almost surprised. Assessment complete. Time 54 minutes. Method non-standard. Efficiency rating extremely low. Creativity rating extremely high. Conclusion: subjects solved using inferior tools and maximum resourcefulness. Interesting. They collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Taman's hands were cut from working with sharp alien metal. Una's translator was smoking slightly from overuse. But they were alive. 1 test down, she said. How many more? I don't know. The Vorn files didn't specify. They did not have to wait long to find out. Judge directed them to another chamber. This one had 2 pods similar to the one Una had been sleeping in, but smaller. Between them sat a single container of glowing liquid. The second test evaluates decision-making under scarcity, Judge explained. This container holds sufficient resources for 1 subject to survive. You must decide which of you will use it. Time limit none. The test continues until a decision is made. Taman stared at the container, then at Una, then back at the container. That's it? He asked. One of us takes the resource and the other dies? Correct. The Vorn expected subjects with collective consciousness. For such species, individual sacrifice for the group is automatic. Your species has individualistic survival instincts. This creates conflict. How you resolve it determines your rating. Una walked around the container examining it. What if we refuse to choose? Then neither of you receives the resource. Both fail the test. Humanity's assessment is marked as incomplete. What if we both choose to let the other survive? Taman asked. Then neither of you receives the resource. Both fail the test. So someone has to die? Una's voice was tight. Or you accept failure for your species, Judge said. Those are your options. They sat down on opposite sides of the room. 3 hours passed. Neither of them touched the container. They talked instead, sharing stories. Yuna told him about her research, about discovering ruins on distant planets, about the joy of understanding civilizations that had been dust for millions of years. Taman told her about his decade in the military, about fixing ships while officers took credit for his work, about realizing that nobody cared if he burned himself out as long as the equipment worked. "Why did you really leave?" Yuna asked. Taman was quiet for a moment. "Because I looked around one day and realized I had spent 10 years keeping other people alive without ever actually living myself. I was just a tool they used, and I decided that even if I ended up alone and poor, at least I would be making my own choices." Yuna nodded. "I understand that. I spent 7 years studying dead cultures because I didn't know how to exist in my own. Books and ruins don't judge you. Don't expect anything. They just are. And now here we are, supposed to judge each other. Yes." More hours passed. Taman examined the walls while Yuna studied the container from a distance. Neither of them acknowledged what they were both thinking, but it was obvious to judge. "You are attempting to find a third solution," the AI observed. "There is no third solution. The parameters are fixed. Parameters can be changed," Taman said. He was looking at the power conduits in the ceiling. "Everything can be changed if you have the right tools and enough stubbornness. You do not have sufficient time or resources to modify the test chamber. We'll see about that." They worked for 3 days. They slept in shifts. Taman disassembled parts of the station to build a device that could synthesize more of the glowing liquid. Yuna decoded the chemical formula from the station's medical files. Neither of them were biologists. Neither of them were chemists. But they were both smart, both desperate, and both absolutely refused to accept the choice they had been given. On the 4th day, Taman's device produced a second container of the glowing liquid. It was smaller, less pure, but according to their scans, it would work. They each took a container and drank. Judge was silent for a long moment. Then assessment complete. Expected outcome, 1 subject survives. Actual outcome. Both subjects survive through creation of additional resources. Efficiency, impossible to calculate. Method, refusal to accept established limitations. Conclusion, subjects demonstrate unreasonable persistence resulting in success. Most unusual. Taman and Yuna sat together, exhausted but alive, both of them. 2 down, she said. "I'm starting to hate that AI," he replied. "Me too." But despite the exhaustion and the fear, both of them smiled. They were still alive, still fighting, and for the first time since meeting, they were starting to feel like a team. The 6 hours passed slowly. Taman explored more of the station while the revival process worked. He found food storage units that still functioned, medical equipment that looked far too advanced for human technology, and more empty pods. Dozens of them. Hundreds maybe in other chambers, all empty except the one with Yuna Park inside. He tried not to think about what might have happened to the rest of her team. The station's logs were incomplete, damaged by time or deliberately erased. All he knew was that they had activated something they should not have touched, and then they were gone. When the timer showed 10 minutes remaining, Taman returned to the pod chamber. He watched through the glass as color slowly returned to the woman's face. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes moved behind closed lids like she was dreaming. The pod opened with a hiss of releasing pressure. Liquid drained away through hidden channels. The woman coughed, gasped, and her eyes snapped open. She screamed. Taman stepped back, raising his hands. "It's okay. You're safe. I'm human like you." But she kept screaming, thrashing in the pod, trying to get out. Her hand slipped on the wet surfaces. She fell forward and Taman caught her before she hit the floor. "Let me go," she shouted, pushing against him. "Where is my team?" "What did you do?" "Nothing. I just found you. I found this station 3 hours ago." Taman held her steady but did not try to restrain her. "My name is Taman Kang. I'm a salvager. You've been in that pod for a long time. You need to calm down." She stopped struggling and stared at him. Her eyes were wide with fear and confusion. "How long?" Taman hesitated. "According to the logs, 127 years. Yuna Park's legs gave out. Taman lowered her gently to the floor. She sat there shaking, staring at nothing. "That's impossible," she whispered. "We just activated the device yesterday. We were taking readings. Jiho was excited because the symbols matched patterns from old Earth. Sumi was recording everything. We were being careful. Her voice trailed off. She looked around the chamber at the empty pods, at the ancient alien machinery. Where is everyone? I don't know, Taman said quietly. The logs are damaged. All I know is what I told you. Yuna closed her eyes. Tears ran down her face. She did not make any sound, just sat there crying silently while Taman stood awkwardly nearby. He had never been good with emotional situations. That was one reason the military had frustrated him so much. They expected him to comfort people, to say the right things, to be a leader, but he did not know how to do any of that. After a while, Yuna wiped her face and stood up. Her legs were shaky, but she stayed upright. Show me the logs, she said. Her voice was steady now, professional. Everything you found. I need to see it all. They spent the next 2 hours going through the station's files. Yuna read much faster than Taman, her eyes scanning the alien text while her translator worked. She had studied ancient languages and alien cultures. This was her specialty, even if the Vorn were older than anything she had ever researched before. This isn't good, she said finally, leaning back from the computer. The device we activated was a neural scanner. It copies brain patterns, memories, personality, everything that makes a person who they are. The Vorn used it to study primitive species without actually interacting with them. Copies? Taman felt cold. Where did the copies go? The logs say they were transmitted somewhere. Deep space coordinates that I can't fully translate. Yuna pointed at the screen. But that's not the worst part. Look at these files. She pulled up documents that showed thousands of species. Most had symbols next to them that the translator marked as dismissed or not worthy of interest. A few were marked quarantined. Even fewer were marked promising. Humans were marked pending final assessment. What does that mean? Taman asked. I think it means the Vorn were deciding if we were worth paying attention to. And look at this. Yuna opened another file. The Vorn didn't just observe. They were selecting species for something. The ones marked ascended were given coordinates to a gathering place. 7 species in 100,000 years achieved that status. And the ones that didn't? Yuna's face was grim. Quarantined. Isolated. Some of these files suggest that species who failed the assessment were prevented from advancing beyond a certain technological level. The Vorn made sure they stayed primitive. A sound echoed through the station. Both of them jumped. It was a deep hum coming from everywhere at once. The lights brightened. Machinery that had been silent began to move. What's happening? Taman reached for his tool knife, even though he knew it would be useless against whatever was waking up around them. A voice filled the chamber. It spoke in a language Taman did not know, but his translator worked quickly. Assessment subjects detected. Human species. Revival protocol acknowledged. Initiating comprehensive evaluation sequence. Yuna grabbed Taman's arm. The station thinks we're here for assessment. It's going to test us. Can we stop it? I don't know. She ran to the computer, her fingers flying over the controls. The Vorn built these stations to be automatic. Once activated, they complete their programming. And we activated it when we woke me up. The voice spoke again. You may address me as judge. I am the assessment intelligence for this facility. You have been selected for evaluation to determine humanity's potential for advancement. Please proceed to the designated testing area. Doors opened in the walls, revealing corridors that had been hidden before. Lights showed the way forward. What if we refuse? Taman called out. Refusal is not an option, Judge replied. Assessment is mandatory for all species reaching threshold development levels. Failure to cooperate will result in automatic failure classification. What happens if we fail? Yuna asked. Quarantine protocols will be initiated. Your species will be restricted from further galactic exploration. Development will be monitored and limited. This is for the safety of the galactic community. Taman looked at Yuna. She looked back at him. They were strangers who had known each other for less than 3 hours. Now they were apparently representing all of humanity in some kind of test designed by aliens who had been dead for longer than human civilization had existed. This is insane, Taman said. Completely insane, Yuna agreed. Do we have a choice? I don't think so. They started walking toward the open doors. Behind them, Yuna's pod sealed itself shut. The chamber lights dimmed. There was no going back now. The corridor led them deep into the station, past rooms full of equipment neither of them understood. Judge's voice guided them. giving instructions in that same calm, emotionless tone. Finally, they entered a large room. The floor was covered in symbols. Strange tools hung from the ceiling. In the center stood a platform with 2 circles marked on it. "Stand in the circles," Judge instructed. "The first test will begin shortly." This test evaluates problem-solving ability under physical constraints. The Vorn expected subjects to possess 8 manipulator limbs and the ability to perceive electromagnetic fields directly. "Accommodations for your species' limitations have not been made." "Wait," Una said. "You're going to test us using challenges designed for completely different biology?" "Correct. The assessment is standardized across all species. Adaptation is part of the evaluation." Taman laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So we have to solve problems designed for aliens who have abilities we don't have, using tools we weren't meant to use?" "Correct," Judge said again. "That's completely unfair. Fairness is not relevant. Capability is what matters. Please step into the circles. The test begins in 60 seconds. Taman and Una looked at each other again. Then together they stepped onto the platform. The floor beneath them lit up. The walls began to change, reconfiguring themselves into something new. Something that looked like a puzzle, but also like a trap. 50 seconds, Judge announced. "I really should have just left you in that pod," Taman muttered. "I really wish you had," Una replied. But neither of them believed it. Whatever was about to happen, at least they would face it together. The countdown continued. The test was beginning, and somewhere far away the fate of humanity was being decided by 2 people who had just wanted to study old ruins and salvage old technology. Sometimes, Taman thought, life had a terrible sense of humor. Taman Kang had been flying alone for 3 weeks, and he liked it that way. His small ship drifted through the dark space, far from any planet or station. The stars outside his window looked cold and distant, exactly how he felt inside. He was done with people. Done with orders. Done with the military and their endless rules. For 10 years he had fixed ships and weapons for the Earth Defense Force. 10 years of being told what to do, where to go, who to save. Nobody ever said thank you. Nobody ever cared that he worked 20-hour days to keep their equipment running. They just expected it, so he quit, sold everything he owned, bought this old salvage ship and a set of coordinates from a man who smelled like cheap alcohol in desperation. The man had promised him an untouched alien station, far from the busy trade routes where other salvagers worked, a place where Taman could work alone, sell what he found, and never have to follow anyone's orders again. The coordinates led him here, to a dying red star that barely gave off any light. His sensors showed something big ahead, floating in the darkness. Taman leaned forward in his seat, squinting at the screen. It was huge. A massive cylinder 3 kilometers long, just hanging there in empty space. No lights, no power, no ships nearby. The metal looked old, covered in strange patterns that his computer could not identify. "Well," Taman said to himself, "either I just found something valuable or I wasted all my money on bad information." He guided his ship closer, his hand steady on the controls. Flying was one of the few things he still enjoyed. Up here alone he did not have to pretend to be friendly. Did not have to smile at commanding officers who treated him like a tool instead of a person. His computer beeped. The patterns on the station's hull were unusual. Not like anything in the database. Not human technology. Not any of the alien species in the Galactic Coalition either. Something older. Much older. Taman felt a small spark of curiosity, the first real interest he had felt in months. Maybe this trip would not be a complete waste after all. He found a docking port on the station's side and connected his ship. The metal groaned as the airlocks joined together. Taman waited, watching his screens for any sign of danger. Nothing. The station was completely dead, except it was not. When he reached for the airlock controls, the door opened on its own. Taman jumped back, his heart racing. The station had no power. His sensors had confirmed that. So how did the door just open? Emergency lights flickered on inside the station, dim and yellow. They revealed a corridor that stretched into darkness, built for creatures much larger than humans. The ceiling was at least 4 meters high. The doorways were wide enough to drive a small vehicle through. Taman grabbed his equipment bag and his scanner. He checked his oxygen mask twice, then stepped through the airlock into the alien station. The air was breathable, His scanner showed. Cold but safe. The corridor was clean. Too clean. No dust, no rust, no signs that anything had ever died here. Just empty halls that went on forever. He walked carefully, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. Every few steps another light would flicker on ahead of him, as if the station was watching him, guiding him somewhere. After 20 minutes of walking, Taman found a large room. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it in the dim light. In the center stood a massive computer, or at least something that looked like a computer. Lights pulsed slowly across its surface. Taman approached it carefully. He pulled out his translator device, a small piece of human technology that could understand most alien languages. He connected it to the computer and waited. Text appeared on his translator screen. Taman read it, then read it again, not believing what he was seeing. This station belonged to the Vorn. He knew that name from history classes he had barely paid attention to in school. The Vorn were ancient aliens who had disappeared over 100,000 years ago. Nobody knew where they went. Nobody had ever found any of their technology still working. Until now. Taman's hands shook slightly as he scrolled through the files. The Vorn had built hundreds of these stations across the galaxy. They were researchers, the files said. They studied primitive species, watched them develop, took notes on everything. They had been watching humanity since before humans even learned to build cities. That thought made Taman uncomfortable. He kept reading, moving deeper into the station's files, finding more and more information. The Vorn had files on thousands of species. Most of them were marked with symbols his translator could not fully explain. Something like not interesting or dismissed. He found the human file. It was marked differently. Pending final assessment, his translator said. Whatever that meant. Taman heard a sound behind him and spun around, his hand reaching for the tool knife on his belt. Nothing there. Just empty darkness and those strange flickering lights. He took a deep breath and kept exploring. Beyond the main computer room, he found laboratories. Equipment he did not understand. Machines that looked like medical devices built for bodies, nothing like human bodies. And then he found the pods. They lined the walls of a huge chamber, dozens of them. Glass or something like glass showing empty spaces inside. Most of them were dark and lifeless, but one was not. One pod in the far corner still had lights. Green lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Taman walked toward it slowly, his scanner held out in front of him. There was someone inside, a human woman floating in some kind of liquid. Her eyes were closed. She looked peaceful, like she was sleeping. Her dark hair drifted around her face. Taman checked his scanner 3 times. She was alive. Somehow, impossibly, she was alive. He found a control panel next to the pod and connected his translator. Data filled his screen. The woman's name was Una Park. She was 29 years old. She had been in this pod for 127 years. Taman stepped back, his mind racing. This was impossible. But the data was clear. She was a xenoarchaeologist, someone who studied alien ruins and history. She had come here in 2720 with a research team. The log said they had activated something and then everyone except her had vanished. He looked at the pod again, at the sleeping woman inside. He could leave her here. Close up the station, fly away, forget he ever saw this place. It would be safer, easier, less complicated. But he had spent 10 years following orders and doing the easy thing. 10 years of letting other people make decisions. He was done with that. Taman pressed the button to start the revival process. The pod hummed to life. The green lights turned blue, then white. Machinery hidden in the walls began to move. On the control panel, a timer appeared. 6 hours until revival was complete. 6 hours to figure out what he had just gotten himself into. Taman sat down on the cold floor next to the pod and waited. Outside, the dying red star cast its weak light across the ancient station. Inside, for the first time in over a century, someone was waking up. And Taman had no idea if he had just saved a life or made the biggest mistake of his own.